Hi, I'm Mercedes Fobb at the Captured on Canvas studio. Welcome to Picture This. For today's painting, picture this. We have a night scene, a full moon shining across the ocean. Up close, a big wave ready to crash, and far in the distance, a little sailboat on the horizon. Before we get started, we'll make sure we have everything sitting in front of us. Most importantly, on my easel, I have my blank 16 by 20 canvas. For my paintbrushes today, I'm going to use my very large flat tip brush. I'm going to use my middle-sized flat tip, a really tiny brush for tiny detail, and last but not least, one of my favorites, what I like to call the Bad Hair Day brush. On our paint palette, we're going to be using plenty of colors today. We're going to have black, white, teal, primary blue, raw sienna or golden yellow, some red, and also don't forget to have a cup of water as well as a sponge or a paper towel for cleaning those brushes. To get started, I'm going to start with my largest brush and start with the background, as I always like to do, and paint to the closest thing last. That being said, I'm going to start with the night sky, but because it's a full moon, I'm going to start with the glow that the moon is going to be creating in the sky. So I'm going to kind of dance around with some teal and some primary blue for this. I'm going to start with some primary blue and separate that on my palette. And I always like to add a little bit of white to colors. So I'm going to just add a little bit to kind of make it a medium to dark blue. And when mixing, I do my very best to keep it in a small little pile there. All right, so now I'm going to start with drawing the horizon. I want my horizon to be probably about halfway up on my canvas. So starting in the center, about halfway up, I'm going to draw that line going left and right, all the way across. And from here, I'm going to just start brushing through the middle of my canvas, kind of flicking it out to the left and to the right. I'm not going to take it all the way to the edge because I'm going to have some black kind of vignette that blue in the center there. So kind of just swipe back and forth, just a few inches from the side. And I'm going to bring this up a little ways. So I want a nice full moon here. I'm going to bring it up about halfway up to the top. And I am going to make sure to keep this paint on, not too thick, but you know, a good amount on there because we are going to work a little quick here so we can get some blending colors. I'm just going to wipe off my brush on the side of my palette to dip into the teal. So I'm going to use a little bit of teal next. One of my favorite colors, so I always like to add that in there. I'm going to start right above that blue, and I'm going to go back and forth, same as we did before. Then I'm going to start overlapping that blue, bringing it down to get a nice blend between the two colors. So I'm going to go about this high up, and because it's a night sky, usually it's black. So I'm not even going to clean my brush here. I'm just going to dip right into the black. And this time I'm just going to start from the edge of the canvas and pull it in towards center. But I don't want to cover up all of this beautiful color we just added. So with this, I'm going to start from the edge and just flick over so that it overlaps that blue. And I'm going to do this up each side. And if you don't like how the black is blended in, you can always wipe off that brush and dip into that blue again and blend that area a little bit if you'd like. You can always go back and forth between the colors. That's what's so fun with it. Just get a little bit more of a blend on the sides. You always try to do it quickly while that paint is all wet on the canvas. It makes life so much easier. And I'll take a little bit of that teal and do the same thing. Alrighty. So the next part of the background is continuing down to the lower half, and we are going to just color it all in black. Nice, easy step. But what we're going to try our very best to do is draw that straight line at that horizon. And you know, if it's not perfectly straight, that's okay. Maybe it's really wavy out. A lot of waves. Always remember to breathe. I always move on the exhale, that always helps. And we're just gonna do nice long brush strokes left and right. Also remembering to do the sides of the canvas as well. So one more part with this black that we're gonna do here is start creating that wave. So with the black, it's gonna sound kind of funny. We're gonna paint over black, but we'll just see that little line a little bit. So with the black, I'm gonna create that wave, and I want my wave to start probably about halfway up on the body of water here. So starting about halfway up in the center of the canvas, I'm going to start this big curve. So basically it's like a backward C. I do want it to come over on the right side and really high up on the top there. So from here, we're gonna draw it up and about a quarter of the way down, give or take. If you're unsure, you can always start higher and bring it lower, especially when we add some fun colors to it later. So there is just the general place of where that wave is gonna be. And now what I want to do is I want to color it all in black on the right side of this wave. So any sky that you see over here, I'm just going to color right over that. And even a little bit on this upper left corner here. And just so that we can really see that. It's almost like a cave right now. Okay. There we have it. Now we're done with the blacks, so we'll make sure to clean off our brush. And we're gonna dabble one more thing into our water here. So I wanna start adding a little bit of color, and I want it to blend in a little bit with the black, but not too much. So some colors that I'm gonna use is probably with some purples, reds, and blues. But honestly, this is where you can get creative and use whatever color you'd like. I'm going to prepare kind of a reddish purple, so I'm going to start with a big scoop with my large brush here, plop that in the middle of my palette, and add a little bit of primary blue to it. Once again, trying to keep it in a little pile, and we'll be using this color later too, so it's okay to have plenty. And you know, I might just add a little bit of white as well, because I feel this will really hide in that dark background, so a little bit white will make sure that it shows. There we go. So with this brush, I'm just going to use a little bit on my brush, not too much, because I do want it to blend a little bit. And I'm going to use my brush standing up, so that's standing up vertically. So when I go left and right, it's just going to make a nice fat brush stroke. So I'm going to start where I'm going to have like the center, where I'm going to have that moon. So just kind of soft flicks back and forth. And the more you go over it, the more it's going to get blended in. So if you don't want it blend in as much, try less back and forth movement here. And we're just going to go right down to where that wave is. You can still kind of see it. And you know what? I might just use a little bit of that blue from my sky. Why not? I like that. A little bit of white in there. It'll pop a little bit. kind of alternate that between the purple so we get some variations of colors in there. Even when it mixes with the purple, you get some more variations of colors. Occasionally I hold my brush horizontally to get some thinner little waves in there. And there we are. That is the start, at least, of our water. We'll be adding more to that later. But before we do our next step, we're going to make sure that dries, so we'll take a little break. Welcome back to Picture This. I had just finished painting the background of my masterpiece today, and we are going to start our next step, which is going to be adding finally some color to this dark piece. I'm going to be adding a lot of cool reflective colors within my wave. So before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and prepare all of those colors. I already had some violet kind of from the step before, and then I still got a little bit of that blue, but I'm going to go ahead and mix some more of that. Again, I'm going to start with a big scoop of white, take a big scoop of blue, mix that in, kind of a medium to lighter blue this time. Maybe I want it to pop a little bit more. Then I'm going to wipe off my brush. The next color, I'm going to play with a little bit of teal, so I'm just going to take a big scoop of white, take a little bit of teal, mix that in, get a nice lighter teal. Again, trying my best to keep it in a nice little pile. And I think I'm going to do a light yellow too. So I'm going to want to clean my brush to get a fresh start here. And again, because I want a nice light color, I'm going to start with a big scoop of white. And plop that wherever I have room, maybe here, and add a good scoop of that mustard yellow. All right, here we go. And you can always make whatever colors you want too. So you can always mix more colors. These are the colors that I'm deciding to do. I'm going to clean my brush one last time. And now I'm going to start the wave. I'm going to start with the darkest color first and end with the lightest color. So I'm going to start with some of that violet. Now with this, I'm going to use that big brush, nice light pressure. We're just going to do quick flicks with the brush. I'm going to start down here in that lower corner of my wave. So it's going to start pretty level. And I'm going to use either the wide side of the brush or the thin side. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You can alternate, have some fun. We don't need to cover all of the black because I like having layers. We want to see every part of the layer. And we're going to kind of follow that first curve we drew with the black. So I'm going to continue all the way up and around. Adding in a good amount of that. Kind of fill in that lower right corner as well. And I'm getting a good amount of paint on my brush so that it will blend a little bit with the other colors later. That also helps get some more variation in there. And I'm going to go right to that edge of that black as well, where we originally drew our wave. And this color does dry, a little bit darker too. So if you see that it's not showing, you can always add a little bit of white to it. And I'm going to kind of continue all the way up to that little right corner there. This wave is splashing off of our canvas. And it's going to come somewhere around here. So about halfway up in the sky area is about how far down my wave is going to come. So I'm just going to kind of let it disappear somewhere over there. And we'll see that more when I add in some of those lighter colors. So I'm going to dip into now that blue. So the blue, I don't even have to clean my brush for this, which is pretty cool because then you get some other colors mixed in there. So I'm going to continue that same pattern, light pressure, kind of alternate in between the purple areas. Again, rotate your brush, using the thin side, use the wide side, whatever floats your boat. And we're going to continue that around as well. So we're continuing to keep that big backward C. So now I'm going to do my next color without even cleaning my brush again. I'm going to dip right into that light teal. And because now we're getting to the much lighter colors, I want to focus more on the inner part of my wave where that moon would be lighting up that wave, thinking of our light source. So again, just doing the same steps. Color, you can choose to clean your brush or not. I'm going to try not, just see what happens. With a little bit of that light yellow that I prepared, I'm going to add some of that in now. So again, same pattern. So the rest of my water actually now doesn't match my wave. So now we're going to basically do all of those same steps into our water, but we're not going to have it a curve. We're just going to have it nice and straight. So I'm just going to wipe off my brush or clean it. And I'm going to go back to purple, maybe whatever I have left. Just a little bit there is all I need. And I'm going to dance a little bit of that back in there again. Some of it dried pretty dark. And follow through to my next color. I'm going to go into that medium blue, dance some of that in back and forth. And again, I try to keep it very central on my canvas because eventually my moon is going to be here. I want that to be in line where my moon is going to be. Kind of go back and forth and dip into the teal. Doing less and less of each color, maybe using the thin side of the brush too to help. The less you think about it, the more natural it's going to look. And my very last color is going to be some of that light yellow. Just a little bit. Smear that in. All right, we're going to go ahead and clean off our brush now. We're going to do one more thing here. We're going to add in that moon. It's kind of centered underneath that wave, centered on the canvas. It's a nice and easy step actually. Now circles are a lot easier to paint than to draw, but you can always use a stencil as well. Usually I use like plastic cups or something, but I'm just going to continue using that large brush and some white. And to make my life easy, I'm just going to start with one dot where the center of my moon is going to be. Right in the center. Want it a little bit above my horizon here. And from here, I'm just going to spiral out, keeping that circle shape and coloring it in as I go. So this is kind of cool. You can kind of work into the size of your moon. If you want it bigger, obviously just keep that spiral going. You get to decide how big you'd like your moon. Make a nice even coat. I like to bring it pretty close to my horizon. So when later I add my sailboat, I'll see right where it's at. And just for a little texture to it, I'm going to mix just a really light gray. Just a little bit of white, a little bit of black. We can add little craters to our moon. So I'm just going to add maybe a little shadowed line on the one side and the other side. And then just little C's. Or little dabbles with our brush, just to add a little bit of texture to it. All right. So while that dries, we're going to take a little break before we start our next step. Welcome back to Picture This. We are now going to do the final details to complete our wave masterpiece. So with my large brush, I'm still continuing with that one, we are going to add a little bit more of detail throughout the wave. I feel like because that moon is so bright, we got to add some more highlights to it. So I'm going to be using just white, and I'm also going to be using the thin side of my brush. So I'm going to use it kind of laying down as I go left and right, and then I'm going to rotate it standing up as I go around the big wave. I'm just going to add a little bit of white to my wave, just really quick little lines, just a quick little flick. We're also going to add some more to the water underneath the moon. So for sure, I'm going to always hold my brush left and right, making those thin lines. Just a little highlight there. As they're farther away, they might be closer. And as they come down and closer to us, they're more spread apart. Kind of playing a little bit with perspective here. And now we can take a break from that. We're going to go ahead and clean off our brush. Okay. This would be my second favorite part here, and it is going to be adding that extra splash at the end of the wave. So I'm going to be using my Bad Hair Day brush. This is any rough bristle, old wore out brush that we can do some dabbling with. I'm going to be using white to create that splash. And I don't want to start with too much paint on my brush, just a little bit. And I'm going to just do some dabbling at the end. All right, so that should be good. We're going to go ahead and clean off our brush and finally move to my tiniest little brush here. So with my tiniest brush, we are going to paint in that sailboat. Luckily for us, it's nice geometric shapes. So I'm going to be using light pressure, and I'm going to start with the sail because I wanted to actually go in front of my moon. I feel like it's going to create some extra depth and some contrast. So with that little brush, I'm going to start with the bottom of my sail. I would say probably no more than a pinky's width above my horizon line. And I want it to be centered to the moon. And you can make it as big or as little as you want, honestly. I don't know, I might make mine about 1 inch wide, give or take. And then I'm going to draw a center line up for the tallest point of the sail. And then I'm going to come down on the left and the right side, finishing that triangle. So from that upper point there, down to that lower corner, and the other side as well. And we can color it in. If you want to color it in with your tiny brush, you can, or you can always move to your middle-sized brush as well, depending on how big your sail is. Now we got ourselves a little floating triangle. So we're going to create the rest of the boat. From that tallest point of our sail, I'm going to draw a straight line coming down. And then we're going to draw our boat. So our boat is going to be just a little bit longer than the sail is wide. And then I'm just going to have a little angle coming down on the front of the boat and then on the back. And here it shows really well in front of that reflection. So if you didn't add as much reflection, you might want to add some more so that it actually shows in front of that dark background. You can draw that line across and color that area in. All right. And I think that's good for now. We're going to go ahead and clean off our brush again. And now we're going to add one more detail to our wave. This is just going to give it a little bit more contrast yet. It's going to be kind of the shadow with some black. I'm going to use my my large brush actually, but you can use your middle-sized brush too for this. Everybody works a little bit differently. I am going to be using the thin side of my brush just like I did the white throughout the highlights. So with that black, we're going to do that same exact thing. And we can also add a little bit of this throughout the body of the water as well. Again, nice left and right. Especially coming from that left and right side, it kind of brings in that shadow, defining that reflection. You can have a couple little guys in the middle. Your sailboat should be kind of shadowing the water as well, so I'm just going to add a little bit of extra black lines underneath the sailboat, creating kind of that shadow. It's kind of like we're almost mirroring that shape of the boat to make it look more realistic. Either use the corner of your brush or move to a smaller brush can be helpful here. And then I'm going to clean my brush. I think that's pretty good. So my final step here, I feel like my sailboat's just a little hidden in that background, so I always like to add a little bit of highlight to that as well. I'm gonna move back to that little brush, and a highlight color would be probably gray. I think it would be good. Unless you wanna get fancy, you can do any color. But I'm gonna start with some white to the side again, and add just a little bit of black. We kind of want a medium to dark gray. We don't want it to be too dark, because then it wouldn't show. But we don't want it to be too light, because then I feel like it'd be maybe too much contrast. And with that, I'm going to use light pressure and basically just add a highlight throughout all of it. So just inside the edge of the sail, I'm going to add a little bit of gray there on both sides. I'm also going to add one kind of straight down the middle for that post. Maybe even all the way down to the boat with that highlight there. Maybe some across the bottom of the sail, and especially the top of the boat. I noticed for me that kind of really hid where that black horizon is. So I definitely want to add some highlight there. Front of the boat, back of the boat. And maybe if you want some texture throughout the middle. Honestly, it's up to you. And there it is. I think I'm done with my wave masterpiece, but before you're done, an artist always signs their work. So you get to pick whatever color you would like to sign your name with. I always like to sign in the lower corner out of the way. And I also like to date it, this piece. And there it is. Thank you so much for following along with me, Mercedes Faub, at the Captured on Canvas studio. We'll see you next time on Picture This.